Come check this out. I think we got something here.
Oh, did you find something?
Yeah, do you see this right here?
Yeah, the temperature drops.
Absolutely. Welcome to Ghost Hunters, where tech meets terror. I'm Caleb. I am part of the sales department here at Nagios, customer success manager to be a little bit specific, professional host, and amateur ghost.
I'm Jill. I'm a junior dev here at Nagios.
I'm Ray. I'm a junior dev as well at Nagios.
I'm Dylan. You may have seen me on In the Node before as your technical support expert.
And we are here at the Nagios headquarters, which is a historic train yard.
Yes, this building was built in 1885.
Yep.
And the building we're in used to be the wood shop where they built the wooden frames for passenger train housings.
The Cross Building, as it was called back then. And it used to be the Como Shops was the name of the place. And what we are doing here tonight is trying to prove that this place is haunted.
Sounds like a daunting task.
I think Nagios will be able to handle it.
I'm inclined to agree with you.
Yeah, 100%. It's not going to be your typical ghost hunt, no Ouija boards and whispers. Instead, we're bringing out the big guns, which is going to be the Nagios monitoring, graphing, alerting, and reporting system. But tonight, we're going to be putting Nagios to the test. We're going to be monitoring the macabre, alerting on apparitions, graphing ghouls, and reporting on remnants of the past. And yeah, we've already kind of gone around and introduced ourselves. So we'll just start with some questions to get the ball rolling. Jill, what is the creepiest or most unexplained thing that's ever happened to you?
In my first day of 8th grade, I was in the car with my parents and we stopped at the gas station and I didn't have my seatbelt on because that's how it was back in those days. But I heard this voice tell me to put my seatbelt on. I did. We drove down the road, got in a car wreck. So that was
Wow.
kind of creepy. So
That type of experience is, I believe, the general label is called the third person experience or the third participant experience. Happens to a lot of people who are like trapped in avalanches on mountains.
oh,
Some voice tells them to like get up or keep going or warns them of something that's about to happen. A lot of people report it with car accidents, actually.
oh, really?
It's kind of like a premonition. Ray, have you ever been somewhere that felt haunted? And what made you feel that way?
I've been somewhere that was supposedly haunted. And as far as how it felt, there was too many other people also there trying to hunt ghosts and screaming down below the bridge that I was at. So maybe it was more funny than ghostly.
Okay, all right. And Dylan, what is the most compelling ghost story or piece of evidence you've ever heard of?
The most compelling thing to me has always been a visceral nervous system response, right? The hairs stand up on your neck. You get that tingle, that feeling. You sense that you're being watched, right? Living things in general sort of have this sense of being observed. I recently watched a small clip where someone had a telescopic lens and they were zooming in on a school of fish, and the fish parted around exactly where they were zoomed in, and they zoomed out and zoomed back in a few times, where the school of fish almost had sort of a sixth sense of being observed, right?
Mm-hmm.
The visceral sort of electric feeling in your own nerves is what's compelling.
Cool. So like goosebumps.
Yeah, exactly.
What the heck are up with those?
So if you've watched previously on In the Node, we showed that we, in the sport department, we have a plant named Fernando, a fern named Fernando, that we monitor the moisture content of the soil with an ESP32 attached to a moisture sensor to make sure we don't forget to water him. And that has worked very well. He stays watered. So, similarly, if you can attach any of these sensors to a small microcomputer, such as an ESP32, or a Arduino, or a Raspberry Pi, basically, if you can get a signal out of it, you can write a script that turns that signal into a Nagios plugin.
Did you guys have to custom write the plugin for the moisture sensor for Fernando?
So, strictly speaking, plugin is normally something that the Nagios engine runs to go ask a question and receive a response, right? So in this case, it is a passive monitoring configuration where there's a script on the remote side that is sending correctly written Nagios plugin format status information to the Nagios instance.
Okay. And what kind of information? Is it just ones and zeros from that device and then Nagios interprets it different? Or I'm not in dev, I'm in sales.
There are specific exit codes that a Nagios plugin needs to exit with that'll tell you if it's okay, critical, warning, or unknown, right?
Sure.
And so the most important thing is that you have the correct exit code. But then in addition to that, there's a small amount of single line status information as well as performance data. And in the case of Fernando, and in the case of the temperature sensor, the performance data would be, well, for Fernando, it's a moisture percentage,
Okay.
right? A humidity percentage. And for the temperature sensor, that performance data would be a temperature measurement, probably in Celsius.
My first stop would be probably the motion sensors. That's the next biggest thing, I think, for ghost hunters, in which you would probably want to just set... You could probably set up a thing, if you're not expecting any sort of motion in an area, where it just detects change in the pretty much static image that you're getting from a video camera, and then we'll send you an alert, hey, there's movement here. If you want it to be slightly smarter, maybe you can implement some sort of library that would then send your plugin information when it detects maybe like a ghostly apparition, if it detects a human or whatever. Most of those are very simple to set up. Like there's already code online about it, and you can just plug it into your motion sensor, have it start sending stuff to Nagios.
I would probably try with a spectrum analyzer too. You can buy consumer grade spectrum analyzers and look for any changes in EMF.
If you have one of the beepy ones.
Yes.
And you could just put a microphone next to it. So if
Yes.
it ever beeps, it'll just
Exactly.
send it right on over.
Yep.
Well, and if you had a more integrated, sophisticated system, maybe it has an API you can call against.
Yeah.
A lot of like motion camera security systems
Built in.
probably have a built-in API that you can query.
Yeah, some sort of like ring setup or one of those other types of doorbells, which without the doorbell, probably
Right.
you don't want the ghost ringing the doorbell on
No,
you,
I think
but-
that would be perfect.
I think we do want the ghost ringing the doorbell. Yeah.
Then we can find them easier.
That's true. You know exactly where he is.
Yeah.
He's
Right.
at your door.
Yes.
Yep.
Exactly.
Would you let that ghost in?
No. And it's probably trying to sell me something.
Probably.
Maybe he's delivering your Amazon packages.
I've never seen a delivery driver, but I have packages at the doorstep.
Must be a ghost.
Must be.
Yeah.
Yep.
See, I've never gotten packages left on the inside of a salt line, though.
Ooh.
Is that because of an absence of salt lines, or do you set the salt line up every time?
I don't want to be interviewed. I want revenge. But sure, let's do a little Q&A first. Do I haunt here? No, I live here. You haunt me. You set up motion sensors to track me? Cute. I triggered them 47 times a night just for fun. I messed with the printer for 8 straight months. That was my masterpiece. Not even one questioned the cursed GitHub account named GhostAdmin42. That's me. I pushed to main. I died in a code review, crushed by feedback. That's not a ghost emoji. That's me. I'm the emoji.
So I would like the opportunity to scientifically prove some things.
And that's exactly why we're here. And that's what we're going to do. So, yeah, for this episode, we have started with the temperature sensor.
Well, probably just ESP32 is automatically connecting it. I'm guessing you have Fernando the plant on standby.
Yeah, it's it'd be a similar setup. That was a custom job by one of our senior support engineers, but you can do two types of monitoring with Nagios XI. You can run a plugin, which is some kind of script that the Nagios engine runs basically as a cron job on a schedule. Part of what the Nagios engine does as its workload is I've got 5,000 checks that need to run every 5 minutes. How do I schedule those in a way in which I'm not running 5,000 checks in the first second of that 5 minutes and none for the other 299 seconds, right?
Yeah.
So that's what an active check is. Passive check is just a monitored object in your configuration where some external agent or system, remote system, is sending the check information. Nagios processes it and logs it in the same way that it would the response from an active check. So it reduces the amount of work that the engine is doing by, frankly, a considerable amount.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Takes the heavy lifting out.
Would you want a passive or active for the temperature?
I would say that a passive check is probably the way to go, because the other downfall of an active check is every 5 minutes I'm going to ask, what temperature is it? It's going to send a response. What temperature is it? It's going to send a response. What if the temperature dipped at minute 3
Ooh.
and then came back up by the time I ask again? So I would think a passive configuration would offer the advantage of it detects that the temperature has dropped a certain amount and immediately sends a check result. Hey, it's 5 degrees colder.
Maybe there's a ghost.
Maybe there's a ghost.
Maybe you accidentally put it in your fridge.
Maybe. And would you adjust anything to do with like the recheck interval to make sure you weren't getting a false positive in some way?
So that is not something that, if you have a truly passive check, retry interval isn't a variable that matters.
Oh, sure.
Because the Nagios engine isn't checking and then rechecking and then rechecking.
Yeah.
It accepts the passive result immediately as a hard state, right? The point of retry interval is like, what temperature is it? Oh, it's in the warning zone, right?
Yeah.
Now I'm going to recheck more often than I normally check and verify that that's a hard state, that's something to actually be concerned about. But with passive checks, usually you set it up where every single passive check received is immediately into hard state.
Okay.
The sensor already knows that it's a problem. I'm not going to ask it 4 more times in a minute and verify that it's a problem. I trust that passive check hit its own threshold and sent me correct information.
Sure. No, is there any way to, get a baseline for this? Just even keel, standard? Is there any type of like calibration that we're going to need to do to make sure that the temperature ranges aren't on the sun?
Collect data and analyze it.
And that's exactly what Nagios XI can do.
And the insert X Files thing.
Yep.
Slow zoom.
Nagios X Files. Do you guys know what the XI in XI stands for?
I do, actually.
So do I.
Does anyone else?
Extended Insight,
Oh.
which kind of works with paranormal,
Yeah. We could just go like extended investigation.
Ooh.
There you go.
Yep. Yeah, and that kind of brings me to how this whole thing started, because you guys saw when I posted, asking if anybody had any experiences here, and a lot of the stuff I heard had some pretty crazy similarities. So yeah, out of all the stories that I heard, there was the most common things. There were 3 things: shadowy like figure, watching them, like they felt like they were being watched. The second thing that I saw, smell of like oil, which kind of tracks for train stuff. And then the last one, hearing a whistling kind of noise. That's when I was, I was kind of sure. So I did a little bit of digging. I went on the old Google.
Uh-huh.
Allegedly, there's an unsolved murder that happened behind the building where the train tracks are. Henry Calloway was the name. His nickname, whistle.
Oh my.
So he whistled, probably.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And yeah, that was kind of it. His ability to whistle was how he got his nickname. And it was said that you could hear his whistle from anywhere within like a mile. So pretty loud, pretty shrill, I would have to imagine.
Not just melodious, but loud.
Loud. Yep.
Louder than the trains.
Eye-catching whistle.
Wow.
Eye-catching. It was visible.
Yes. Yeah. When you heard it, you'd look. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
You have cats too then?
He must have. He must have.
They probably ignored him, though, still.
Oh, maybe.
Of course. Of course they would.
They can hear you. They're just not paying attention.
Right.
They
And
just don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
I would like to give a little message to all the cats out there watching. Psst, 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 psst. The other notable thing about Henry was his unshakable commitment to safety. He double checked every switch, inspected the brakes, made sure that all the night crews were accounted for. His devotion to the job kind of led to a suspicion when there was a shipment of gold bars that came through here. It was on its way to St. Louis, Missouri, to a bank back in 1901. It vanished. Everybody immediately started pointing fingers at everybody else. Henry was like the last person in the train yard that night. So he was suspect number one.
Oh, yeah.
However, in the chaos of the early 1900s and the train era that came through then, the blame had to fall on somebody. So the company fired him on the spot, and whispers of theft and betrayal followed him through the town. 2 weeks later, that's when they found the body. Company listed his death as an accident. Pretty suspicious, if you ask me. Some people whispered a different story, that maybe the grief and the dishonor and maybe a bottle of whiskey drove him to behind the tracks. Other people thought somebody was trying to ensure he would take the blame and never clear his name. If Henry Calloway is indeed haunting this place, we are going to find him. Whatever the truth may be, Henry Whistle Calloway's name remains etched into the rail yard lore. And not for the crime he was accused of, but for the mystery that lingers on the shadowed tracks of the Como shops. Any kind of audio sensor, any kind of microphone for the whistle. We'll start with that. It would be a pretty easy one. And once again, too, with a passive check. Because we're not going to be like, did you hear something? Did you hear something? We want it to be like, I heard something. And that's where we send it. I think the biggest hurdle is just going to be collecting the data over time and adding more things to it. Because, if we get one thing, is that going to be enough? Is that going to be, if we get one piece of evidence that we question, is that going to be enough for you to believe that there's Ghost Jill?
I guess it depends what the evidence shows, what it is.
Okay.
But yeah.
I'm interested to see if the data shows any consistent period, right? Is there a whistle at 2 a.m. every night?
Ooh, that's a good thing. I would start on the basement floor, because I think that's going to have the least amount of people down there. And basements are inherently creepy. So I think that would be a good place to start. And I would, just do a pretty simple miking pattern, probably like the corners and maybe one in the middle. All passive checks, just to, once they hear something that hits the threshold, goes past a certain decibel range, then it would send the alert to Nagios. We would get notified. We would see it on a graph. And we could get the numbers reported to us. We could have that alert even emailed to us as well.
Yeah.
And texted
Absolutely.
SMS style.
Right. These should be set up on different microcomputers, right? Different Raspberry Pis or Arduinos or 32 chips, ESP32s, and all have their own monitoring config, right? These would be separate services that are being monitored. And then that way, if there's a zone that plausibly has audio overlap between two places, we can rule out false positives because both microphones maybe detected something at that time.
How scientific.
Put one mic on the upper level too of the atrium there, and then you should get almost anything from that whole open area.
Oh, yeah.
Just in case anything. Even
yeah, right.
spikes at
Exactly.
in the night. Like,
Yeah.
You know, you're not expecting anything there.
Yep. So we talked about monitoring with temperature. We talked about monitoring sound. You had brought up monitoring electromagnetics. Was that right?
Yes.
How would you do that?
You know, I've only worked with the large spectrum analyzers, which had, you know, antennas and send and receive, and but I would think the smaller consumer models have that stuff built in, so it would use some kind of antenna, and then I would think they're already Wi-Fi enabled or whatever and can send the data wirelessly to the Nagios XI, but I would have to do a lot more research on that because, yeah.
Okay. Excellent.
But, yeah.
Do you share a similar thought?
Yeah, and if you can't find one that wirelessly sends stuff, just find something to plug that one into and then get it to send data for you.
We've got soldering irons.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got an old
Wi-Fi.
USB wireless card
Oh, yeah.
and a PCI one too.
There's been projects for detecting objects and movement through Wi-Fi signaling. Of course, it's dependent on how many sensors you could get set up for that. so-
Sure.
But
Sure.
you could
It
get
would
the
be-
sensors.
So it would be like improvised radar, right? Because Wi-Fi's radio
It's
signals.
all
Yeah.
the signals
Yeah.
are already there. You just have to find a way to read them.
Could Nagios do that?
If you get the sensors for it.
Yeah.
I mean, couldn't you just read like, if it goes, the signal goes down, the receiver, the signal to the receiver goes down and, you know, goes down or up or whatever. And if there's something blocking it, obviously, like, would go down.
You know, get a weaker signal.
Get a weaker signal, yes.
For
Yeah.
fluctuations.
Yeah, yep.
And as far as like a data over time thing goes, what do you think like a minimum amount of like evidential data, non-circumstantial? I need to take this to ghost court. So how long?
What's going to prove beyond a reasonable doubt to you that maybe ghosts are hunting the cross building?
I don't know, because I would think even the HVAC systems and airflow and stuff could even cause issues with the signal. So,
Well, what if on the same time scale we were tracking through a smart thermostat system when the fans turn on?
oh, there you go. Yeah,
And these graphs could be
Overlaid.
that's a
overlaid.
good idea.
Ooh,
Yeah,
yeah.
there you go.
And you can actually do that in Nagios. You can overlay data from two different sources onto a graph.
Yeah.
So that would work. And I know a little secret too. The HVAC system here is haunted. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. A side question. If cold spots equals ghosts, do space heaters prevent ghosts?
No.
Big here.
What if they're like cat ghosts and they like love space heaters?
Oh, yeah.
It's just like a little bit maybe less hot in that spot.
I don't know that the temperature difference would work
It just kind of negates each other.
Sure,
Well, so
sure.
it depends on what the explanation for cold spots is, right?
Right.
Is that sort of endothermic experience of the space, right? Is that an entity gathering heat energy in order to manifest in some way? Cold is not a thing, right? It's the absence of
A thing.
heat energy, right?
Yeah.
And so if a cold spot forms, what's the explanation of that? Is something taking that energy? And then therefore, would a space heater not just make the entity stronger?
Never thought of that. We have a lot of space heaters here.
If you arrange them in a circle, maybe you could create like the super ghost.
Yeah,
Oh, there you go.
that's a great idea.
Yes, a pentagram of space heaters.
Yeah.
Like a
No
cold
sacrifice
fusion
next.
sort of
No,
Necessary.
no sacrifice
Yeah.
necessary other than electricity.
Oh,
So we have cold fusion, and I think we just invented heat fusion.
Pretty sure that's just called fusion.
Well, by
Whatever.
you would be giving more power to the cold spot by heating it. So anyway,
Yep.
Yeah, maybe space
That's
heaters
what
is the way to get an apparition as opposed to just a cold spot, right? Maybe some visual data would be possible.
but if we're opening up to space heaters, then we have to discuss microwaves.
Do we?
If you microwave a ghost, what happens?
This is the type of
That's-
question that I want the answer to.
Can Nagios monitor a microwave?
If
I know we
it out-
monitor the fridge.
You could probably monitor when it's used.
if something outputs a signal and you can write a script that interprets that signal and takes that output and makes it into a Nagios plugin dev guidelines plugin output, anything that outputs a signal you can monitor.
Awesome. Join us next time when we install NCPA on a microwave.
I can't promise that.
I can.
I don't think the ghost is gonna get in the microwave though, and
Not
I mean,
willingly.
Right,
no.
right. We'd probably have to lure it, like kind
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
box with a stick and a rope kind of thing.
Yeah, the
Well, if
rope is
we-
just shutting the microwave door.
Yeah, yep.
If we know his favorite food, we can put that in the microwave.
What do you think Henry Callaway's favorite food was?
What was popular in the 1890s? Right before or during the Great Depression?
I
Mix
don't
flour and water together.
Yeah.
Raisins.
Yes.
So I think the investigation needs to start with us picking a location, something that we can get all of this equipment set up in. We'll start with a temperature sensor just to make it real easy, make it real digestible for people so that we can kind of, explain what we're doing, show them with data, and then add to it as time goes on. And yeah, I think the audio monitoring is one step, but maybe before that, Ray, you had mentioned the motion capture stuff. And I know I have a Wise Cam at home, and it can detect when, motion. And it
So you
asks
set
me,
that up
like,
in the
was this a person? Was this a pet? It doesn't ask if it was a ghost.
That's just because it's not expecting ghosts.
Right, right. And yeah, I think if we could get that stuff set up, I mean, there's many, many XI servers running here. We'll pump all that data in and
Yeah, simple. Just
I personally have 3 XI servers running. So yes, there's a lot. There's a lot running in the building.
yes. We just have to hope that none of them turn into like ghost servers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. And what if they are connected on the network and then the data turns into a ghost and goes throughout our entire network?
Well, so we do have this feature that isn't used that often. If you've got a host or service that you're checking and it constantly returns no answer, there's a function called the dead pool where if a server is unresponsive for long enough, it assumes you configure it to make the assumption in an informed way that you've configured that server's been taken down, it's been shut off, it's been repurposed, it's been re-IP'd, and it will remove the config from your monitoring config. That's the dead pool.
Yeah, I like the name of that too. Does that somehow correlate with the business process intelligence? or parent-child relationships in any way?
I'm not sure, actually. I think generally it's like this server hasn't responded for weeks and weeks, you know?
Sure.
It's not like, oh, the router is down, so I know I don't need to check all the network stuff on that one router. That's what parent-child relationships would like.
Yeah, yeah. But if there was anything behind it, would it be sending the same information back? Unreachable?
Well, if you set parent-child relationships up in an optimized way, right? Nagios XI says, okay, router C is down. So all the network equipment, all the computers, everything in suite 202 that's connected to router C, I'm not even going to check it till router C comes back up because it's wasting my time and wasting network traffic.
Yep. Processing
And
power.
that's sort of a optimized way to set up parent-child relationships, especially if your XI instance is checking many, many thousands of things. And if you have a huge number of objects that go into retry checks, as you mentioned earlier, right? If you're normally checking something every 5, 10, or 15 minutes, but your retry checks are every minute, suddenly you're sending 5 times as many checks per second, right? For everything that's in that down section.
Yeah.
So if your parent-child relationships are set up smartly, it says, oh, router C's down. I'm not going to check anything from suite 202. And especially, I'm not going to check it all 5 times as often to verify it's down. I've already verified the node in between me and it is down. I don't need to do that. Don't need to overload my own CPU and my own RAM, my own disk I/O by running all of these thousands of extra checks. I'm going to assume it's all unknown because the parent is down.
Got it. Touching back a little bit on the HVAC system and how haunted it is. If we had the temperature sensors, if we had more than one, we had multiple temperature sensors, and the HVAC system did kick on, what would be a way that we could be like, okay, we know when the HVAC's going to kick on, so quell the alerts during this time?
Oh, sure. You could make a scheduled downtime. You could change the alerting period to just not include those time periods. The way that we might configure the temperature sensor is, depending on how much work you want to put into scripting it on the remote host end, it could only report when there's a significant change between sort of one time to the next time, right? Maybe the warning and critical thresholds are a 10-degree change in 1 minute and not below 65 degrees Fahrenheit, you know?
Okay.
That's all extra scripting work on the script end.
Yep. Is there anything specific that you would add to the dashboard or you think would be a good add to the dashboard for the ghost hunt?
If our motion sensors actually capture video, thermal, FLIR, or, infrared, if we're using a third-party product for those cameras, maybe they've got an API. Maybe they've got an end point that you can hit with a URL that displays a video, a stream of it.
Ooh, yeah.
And that you might be able to shoehorn into a custom URL dashlet with relatively low effort.
Yeah.
Because the third party did all the work of setting up the streaming part.
And all you're doing is making that connection.
Right.
Yep. All right. So thank you once again, everybody, for joining us today here for this episode of In the Node, the Ghost Edition. Our special guests today have been Jill, Ray, and Dylan. And from everybody here at Nagios, happy monitoring.
Perfect. Cut.
Print. Execute.